It seems more than ever and more than usual, there's a deepening divide amongst the Tesla retail investors and the Tesla institutional investors. So today we're going to watch a video of Dan Ives of Wedbush Securities, who, while a big Tesla bull, just can't seem to believe that Robotaxi is going to happen before 2030, and he thinks Tesla will be falling into a long period of darker days ahead. He's pushing hard on the idea that it's a strategic mistake to not get the compact car out as soon as possible. While, as many retail investors keep pointing out, the unboxed model of production is the same system that can produce both compact and Robotaxi. But it seems these analysts just can't wrap their heads around that. I've got Larry Goldberg here with us, and he's going to help us interpret and then maybe translate the things that the way Dan and other institutional investors are thinking. Thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you for having me here.
Let's watch this interview that just happened earlier. Dan Ives was on Yahoo News, and we're going to split it up into 2 or 3 little clips here. But let's watch the first bit.
I think we're going to find out Tuesday, because this is probably the worst period that I've seen, I'd say in about 6 years for Tesla. And patience is wearing thin. And you see from an investor perspective, and obviously, many thrown in the towel, the long-term story is still there. And that's why we remain bullish. But no doubt, this is white knuckle, and there could be darker days ahead if Musk does not handle the call, I think, like an adult in the room and actually give some sort of vision and navigation with a lot of questions remaining.
Dan, it's great to speak with you. Let's stick on this adult in the room concept, because a lot of the challenge here for Tesla is that the fundamentals don't always match up with what Elon Musk is purporting about deliveries and company fundamentals. I know that you do a lot of traveling to Asia to take a look at what's going on beneath the hood for some of these manufacturers. What can you tell us from your experience on the ground that may not be making headlines or may not be making its way out of Elon Musk's mouth to investors?
Look, right now, I can tell you firsthand, China EV market, it's like the video thriller, Nightmare on Elm Street. Pick your spot. It's been bad. Now, that's obviously been the huge headwind for Tesla, which is really, that's a key part of the growth, right, in terms of the China story. What I think investors need to hear is, what's the strategy to turn this around? Are they going to maintain prices? And the big thing is Model 2. You need Model 2 to have that growth story the next 18, 24, 36 months. This cannot just be about autonomy 5, 6 years from now. And I think that's really the crucial point here that they need to get, and he needs to get on that conference call in terms of that point.
Let's pause it there. He's going to spend a lot more time talking about Robotaxi. You just heard, he says 5 to 6 years to 2030. Again, we're in between 2 growth waves, but these guys are thinking that the second growth wave, the compact car, is gone, and now it's Robotaxi. What's your interpretation of what you hear there?
Well, it isn't. The production line that's being built right now in Texas is for a next generation vehicle, and it's for a next generation that could be a Robotaxi, day one, could be a next generation vehicle, a conventional vehicle day 2, and it could be both in day 3. We don't know the sequence of release. We don't even know whether they will be released at the same time, but that we do know that they're going to be on the same platform. And that platform is not just for the next generation model car, it's for a next generation a family of vehicles, and so we'll definitely see a Model 2 or next gen vehicle that's conventional vehicle coming off this production line. Now, Dan makes a point that China is the market for that vehicle, is one of the key markets for that vehicle, and so it's going to be important to set up a production line in China as well, and the sooner the better. Were it me, I would be building that factory already. But that's going to be an important component of what Tesla does in the coming couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely thing that's going to happen. So just because Elon said that we're going to go balls to the walls on autonomy, doesn't mean that we're not going to build the compact car anymore. That's never been said. What I think is likely going to happen is, Robotaxi is really only set up right now for the US and Canada. It's going to take another year for even FSD beta to be tried in Europe, and then China also another year. So they're likely going to build, like you said, compact car there. And then once Robotaxi happens, just like the existing cars here, they could turn it on and then turn them into Robotaxi ready as well, just like the existing cars we have now. So it's not like some regions will have the compact car and some regions will have Robotaxi. We'll take a look at that. Let's listen in to more about what he's saying here. The next bit.
Dan, what are you hearing or what are you expecting in terms of the timing of production of the Model 2? And if it doesn't happen according to plan, more specifically, what does that then downside risk look like?
I mean, if they don't do Model 2 and went straight to autonomy, that would be like being at a cliff in the Grand Canyon and looking down below. I mean, the point is, it's a scary proposition because when Tesla talks about 2 growth waves, the second wave is Model 2, refresh Model 3, Model Y, and obviously some other, models that they're going to introduce. But that's the issue right now in terms of Model 2. You cannot go straight autonomy. And obviously some, have reported it. And this is really what I view when I say clock striking midnight. It comes down from us. Navigate the Category 5 storm, just like he has in 18, 2020, and other. Otherwise, this is not just trust me, because I think that's really the frustration now that essentially is, went from a Cinderella story magic carpet ride to what's been a bit of a horror show, especially the last 4 months.
Well,
I love that. He's so witty. Okay.
Colorful.
Cliff,
colorful language, colorful shirt, colorful dress. I mean, he's an amazing guy.
His language is awesome. Grand Canyon, Cliff, Darker Days, Cinderella Story. I missed a few. He's great. He knows how to. Those clips are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, what we're hearing here is angst. And the angst is there's no clarity. You and I are debating, is it this, is it that? And we're making the assumption it is this rather than that. Clarity is, it's the lubricant for Wall Street, because Wall Street is constantly thinking about, the short-term future, and having clarity for that short-term future is so important to their comfort, to the comfort of the investment managers, of the portfolio managers, when they go home at night and they want to put their head on the pillow and know that all is well. And for them, being all is well is this year's earnings, this year's growth. That's their focus, because that's how they're paid. So clarity is what Dan is seeking. And so when you hear all of this colorful language and you hear what he's saying is, guys, I don't know what the strategy is. Please tell me the strategy, and please don't tell me it's only autonomy. Now, Dan is also talking about autonomy in 5 years' time. That, is unfortunate. I think he hasn't bought in yet, and maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but he hasn't bought in, that's for sure. So, we saw a note this morning from Goldman Sachs. They're bought in. So for those portfolio managers and those analysts who are not bought in, this is a rough time. For those that are bought in, it's still an open question of what comes first, which is the chicken, which is the egg. And we are having this debate between us. So that clarity is what is being called for and what is being asked about from Elon in this investor call. Now, we're not asking him to give us a roadmap. He will not do that in a call. We're not asking him to give us a product, reveal. He will not do that in the call. What we're asking is for clarity on strategy. So many of us are saying this is going to be the product. Others are saying that's going to be the product. There's still yet others are saying these are going to be the products. That kind of clarity of strategy is so important to the market. It's not important as much to me. I think I understand the long-term strategy of the company, and I'm bought into the long-term strategy of the company. I certainly don't see Autonomy coming in 5 years' time. I see it coming within a year or so. I see the next generation vehicles coming with the next year or so. I have open questions about where they're going to manufacture, the vast numbers that they're going to need, and what they're going to do about the China market. Those are open questions that I'd love to have resolved, but I'm bought in. Dan is not. And it's very important to the short-term stock price that people like Dan are bought in. If you're worried about the stock price over the coming year, then we need Elon to give comfort to these people by very clear, uncomplicated, Elon indication of what this launch is going to look like for the next year or two.
So the Tesla earnings call is happening this Tuesday. We're going to have on this channel, we're going to have a live stream. We're going to do pre-show and the current show. Just yesterday, they released the Say technologies that allows a shareholder, if you're a Tesla shareholder, ask a question. And if it gets voted up by the most people with the most shares that votes up the top 10, they usually answer the top 10 questions. So one of those questions is going to be that, right? Like, are you saying no more compact car? What's your plan for the next several years? How long, just give us some ballpark ideas about that. So ask those questions. We're going to hear their answers next Tuesday. This is precisely the next segment here is Dan Ives talking about, he's been harping about, he wants clarity. He wants clarity from the earnings call. He wants guidance. He's very upset. And I think that part I agree with him. I mean, there's parts of what he's saying, which is true, which is Tesla's communication, not giving guidance, which I'm okay with not giving guidance. It's just this, like, if you don't give guidance, you should give a little bit more structure around what to expect. You don't have to actually use the exact guidance of numbers, but they're just leaving it, communication is where everybody goes haywire.
I think what you're saying is not, we don't need guidance with numbers. We need guidance on strategy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's lacking. That's what I'm calling for in terms of clarity.
Yeah. Let's listen into the next segment here with Dan.
Analysts are, and we're hearing from sources that the future of Tesla does really rely on cracking that driverless autonomy that you did mention. How likely is that?
Look, autonomy is going to be key, but we're not really going to see driverless, no steering wheels, 2030. And think about the regulatory involved here. So that sounds great on a PowerPoint and sci-fi in terms of what autonomy, and we do believe in the autonomous vision. But in the near term, it's about growth. What does free cash flow look like? How do you reverse the growth trend? How do you get to 3, 4, 5 million units? The only way you get there is with a sub 30K car, Model 2. For a product line that really hasn't had a refresh since Model Y. Cybertruck continues to be limited. That's not going to be mass market. And that's the issue here. This should almost be the equivalent of Apple being like, okay, iPhone 14, you're like, iPhone 15, iPhone 16. Hey, just wait till the iPhone 24. Stay tuned.
That probably wouldn't work out too well for Apple side.
No. But that's also the difference between a tactician, a Hall of Famer like Cook, versus what we're seeing with Musk, which has really been like a comedy show, a bad comedy show, the last few conference calls.
So Dan,
Oh man, I guess I have to pause it there. That's a pretty strong statement that he just made about Tim versus Elon.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it that Elon's conduct of our conference calls, which I've been very critical of, is substandard. There's no doubt about it. Elon does not really appreciate the analysts. He doesn't appreciate their short-termism. He doesn't appreciate how they have, in the past, commented on Tesla and its strategy when he's been proved absolutely correct. I mean, but he gets terribly personally involved. And, the one conference call where he didn't appear was really an outstanding conference call because Tesla has got such a clear strategic approach and has got such well-laid plans. I mean, there are very few companies that have got the kind of strategic plan documents that Tesla have produced. When you think about, these incredibly detailed and strategic long-term documents that they create. And they've executed so well against them. I've written about this at length. And analysts don't appreciate that. They want short-term, this year, maximum next year, indications. They also want actual figures, and Tesla's never been prepared to give them that. But guidance in terms of what you are planning is so important when you hear the confusion amongst even us, followers on a day-to-day basis of Tesla, retail followers with in-depth knowledge of product and company and even people in the company, and we are confused and we're debating amongst ourselves. That is not right. The other thing is Dan is talking about, no autonomy for the next 5 years. He's not bought into the idea that we're on the brink of. We could be wrong. Maybe we're not on the brink of. And Elon could be wrong. And yes, he says he's not betting the company, but it's going to be rough. But he needs to be clear about what the plan is with autonomy and the plan is without autonomy, and what the fallback is. If there's no fallback, let him say so. But let's be clear about what the plan is.
Yeah, that's why I've been doing a number of shows is talking about plan Bs. That there's a few plan Bs that's very likely there, and we just need to think about them.
Herbert, why is it up to you?
No.
Why should we be debating this when it's the company's responsibility to tell us this? That's the point, Dan. Look, I don't agree with all of that Dan has said. And in fact, I criticized him quite heavily this morning on X. I don't know if you saw my post, but I was pretty rough with him. And you know what? He said, thank you for the feedback. I got it. And so, the guy is fantastic. I have the highest regard for him, and he's right on this score. He's not right necessarily about autonomy in 5 years' time. I disagree with that, but he's right on the score of we need this information. We need not to be debating it.
Yep. He's not wrong in many ways. And I encourage folks, if you haven't seen this, I did an interview with Dan Ives, and he did a good job of really explaining how he's thinking of things. And it's not that they're dumb. It's just they have different priorities. They have different ways to think of things. And he's not 100% wrong, like we're saying. So let's just finish off his comments that he's made a few times about the upcoming earnings call.
Let's talk about what you think is more realistic then when it comes to delivery numbers, when it comes to gross margin numbers. What do you think is more realistic of what we're going to see from Tesla then in the coming quarters?
The comment didn't give guidance, right? So it's give what margins could look like. There'll be a lot of charges. Where does gross margins level out at? What's a realistic delivery number? Is it 1.95? Is it 2 million? What does growth look like? Like, give the 2 to 3 year targets in terms of, and that could be an analyst day. And then also they have to have the AI day in terms of where also Musk needs to recommit to keeping the AI initiatives at Tesla. Remember that, that threat, which obviously has ruffled a lot of feather, and that's a huge issue.
Right.
So we could talk about the proxy and the Delaware and moving to Texas, but there's a lot of issues right now that are uncertain. And that's why investors, and I hear it all day long, investors are just like too much risk with no pilot on the plane. And they don't want to see Ted Stryker as the pilot.
So Dan, super quick here. You sound pretty pessimistic. You're still a buy on the stock. What would it take to change your rating?
Look, next week, they need to basically reaffirm the Model 2, reaffirm the low-cost vehicle, give a strategy in the next 6, 9, 12 months. This can't just be a trust me, autonomy, we'll be back to you in 2030. And that's why you're seeing many throw in the towel, because of the fears and a lot of the reporting that surrounds that, along with the cost cuts that were definitely, I'd say a little gut-wrenching relative to a company that should, in theory, be in growth mode.
Put no pilot on the plane. We don't want Ted Stryker. I think he's referring to the movie Airplane in the 70s. It was a satire. I love it. This guy's funny. He's so good.
Yeah, and we don't want the movie Spaceballs either, I have to say. I mean, look, I happen to agree with him, but you heard him say, give me 6, 9, 12 months. That's their anxiety, the 6, 9, 12 months. And then he added, next year in the year, look, we need guidance. We need guidance. And I'm not just talking about guidance for the PMs and the analysts. I'm talking about guidance for the retail investors, because you only have to listen to a few of these shows to hear the retail investors at 6s and 4s. We need guidance, and the guidance doesn't have to be this percentage margin, this many cars, it needs to be clear guidance about where we're going with the transition to autonomy, how it's, how it's going to happen, and what is the interim business model? What is the interim business plan? I'm a long-term investor. I'm investing in the vision of autonomy. I'm investing in the vision of an energy company. I'm investing in the vision of a robotics company. That's what I'm investing in. And, I invested in the vision of of the Amazon store, the everything store. I invested in that vision, and the numbers weren't the short-term numbers weren't that important to me. There are not many investors like that. Mm-hmm. And even as an investor with a long-term and looking at the vision, I'm looking at the cash in the bank, and I'm realizing that there's not much of it for the kind of transition that has to happen. Give us guidance, please, Elon.
Love it. Thank you so much, Larry. Follow him on X at Tesla Larry. Thanks, everybody. Bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.